I'd like to turn it over to Kathy DesRoches and Mercedes Hunt of Granite State College. And a fun fact about them, they have both eloped, but not with each other. So I'll hand it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today. We had a great presentation yesterday, and today we are excited to do a totally different topic than yesterday. So let me start by sharing my screen. Can you all see the presentation? Yes? Okay, great. So today we're going to talk about personal marketing and branding. So this is really about the you. How do you brand yourself? How do you portray yourself to the outside world? And of course, this slideshow is not even allowing me to. Okay, let's see. Is it going to do it? Resume slideshow. There we go. So I encourage you to start off this morning, whether you're feeling like a sloth or an octopus or a bear, whatever your feeling is for your brand in this very moment, is ask yourself these following questions. What is your mission? What are you trying to accomplish in your life? What are your core values? What are your career goals? Are your career goals perhaps focused? Are they consistent? Are they genuine? When you think of your personal brand and what represents you, what are those core pieces?
So we're going to take so I'm Kathy DesRoches. I also work at Granite State College, and I'm the program director for MS in Leadership and the Nonprofit Certificate Program, which is a graduate level program. And Mercedes and I collaborate on that program. So we're going to take a few minutes to just consider what your personal brand is. And we showed the picture of Snoop Dogg in the last slide because if you think about what his personal brand is, maybe some ideas come to mind about what his brand is. And I think he's sort of iconic. I think people from all different generations know him. So I think he's a really an interesting person to think about when we think about personal brands. So maybe we could just toss a couple of ideas in the chat what we think his personal brand is. And maybe that will help you to start to think about how you would phrase your own personal brand.
Great thinking, Kathy.
Okay, it's cool. Yeah, he's suave. Slick. That's a good one. Confident. Yes, he does come off as quite confident in that hat. That really speaks confidence to me. Okay, so thank you. So let's go to the next slide, Mercedes. And if you could summarize your own personal brand, then this is a good exercise to set us up for the rest of this particular program. So I'm going to ask, I can't remember who's running the chat, the groups. I think it's Bridget. Bridget, if you could put people into groups, and we're going to ask you to think about what your personal brand is, what you would want to be known for, and you can brainstorm this in your group. And then just jot down a few phrases or a sentence or even a few words.
Great. Well, welcome back. I hope it was a productive conversation. I know that some of the breakouts ended up with more people and some ended up with less. So if you ended up in a smaller room, hopefully you really went into in-depth what your brand is. So we're going to move forward a little bit here and switch from your brand to transferable skills or core skills. So if you think about transferable skills can look like lots of things. This list right here provides lots of examples of transferable skills, but there are lots more than just this list alone. But the point that we're trying to bring here is that when you think of like you see a job ad, for instance, or you think about the work that you're currently doing, whether it's volunteering, whether it's whatever you're doing in your life right now, think about how those skills can then transfer to these other, more marketable perhaps skills. So when you think of adaptable, maybe it's too few volunteers show up to an event and you're stuck and you have to come up with what you're going to do. Well, you're adapting in that situation. Analytical, there's a schedule for an event and, you're planning everything out. That requires analytical skills. So as you start to look at the job ads, and hopefully all of you brought a job ad with you, and if not, that's okay. This is great food for thought and good stuff to think, get chewing on. Is many times in a job ad, you will see these skill sets that are in the yellow right now. And so you may think initially, well, I don't have these skills. I don't know. I don't have any good examples of me doing these things. And so the purpose of this right here is just to show you that you probably do. You may have done many of these things. Maybe you created signs for a fundraiser. Well, that's creativity right there. Parking attendants have to do a lot of critical thinking because they're trying to critically create a path, for what row a car is going to be in so they can get other cars out. Working the front desk requires more than just interpersonal skills. It requires good communication. Many times it requires attention to detail. So lots of these examples that we provided here could actually relate to many of the different transferable skills. And then the key here is for you to start thinking about, of these transferable skills, which ones do you have given the experience that you have already acquired or are currently in the midst of doing? Kathy?
So what we're going to ask you to do here is to consider what you do for work, is your hobbies, and see if there are certain things that you can link that you do back to those transferable skills that you may see in a job application. And I'm looking at my notes. And do you want to go to the next slide, please?
Yep.
Okay. And then to think about, hopefully if you did bring a job description of a job that you're interested in, to think about how you can take those transferable skills that were on 2 slides ago and then cross-reference them to your resume. And as I have a friend who used to always say to me, you need to paint a picture for someone. So you need to illustrate through your resume and your cover letter how you fit into that job and create an image of you in that job. So what we're going to ask you to do is, well, I have this note, but I don't think we're going to actually ask you to do this. Yeah. So do you want to go to the next slide, Mercedes?
Yeah.
Do you want to take this one or shall I?
Either way,
Okay.
I can take it.
Okay.
So in this breakout, this is going to be a little bit of a different thing. So you've taken your brand. That was step 1. Step 2 now is you're going to look at a job. So hopefully you brought a job with you, and you want to look at the job itself and look at 3 traits that are listed within the job and how those relate to transferable skills. So in transferable skills that you have. So for instance, if you work at a hotel and you check somebody into a hotel, you may be providing excellent customer service. So even if you don't have a job ad with you, you can then go back to that previous list and we can type some of those qualities into the chat and just spend some time in this conversation thinking about what you have and what experience you have that could then be rewritten in this other format of the transferable skill format.
Okay, so how did that go? Did that go all right? Did you learn anything? So we're just going to ask you if you could put maybe a phrase in the chat that we could share with others about some transferable skills. And as Mercedes was talking earlier, I was thinking about all of the transferable skills one would have by just working at a front desk, which seems like such a simple job, but having worked with customers before, I know it's not as simple as it sounds. So I'll give you a minute if you could just chat a couple things in to share, and maybe you'll inspire other people to add to their own resume.
I've been doing this exercise in the classroom now for, I guess, the last 4 years. And it's always surprising to me. I do it as I review a student's LinkedIn profile, you know, and initially they'll just have their job posted and they'll just say like, a lot of these are hospitality students. So they'll say, you know, worked front desk at a hotel. And then I always write them, you know, when they're reviewing their profile and say, okay, so you work the front desk, but think a little bit deeper. Like, what are you required to do as a part of this? What more could you, how could you reference those minute skills in a way that could really speak to a larger audience and show you, I mean, really that you may have worked at the front desk of a hotel, that's grand. But how could that transfer to a different job? Let's say you want to do something totally different. You want to work for an airline, or you know, you want to instead be a volunteer manager. It could be anything, really. I see people trying to transfer from one job to a totally different industry all the time. And that's what this transferable skills thing is really about.
Yeah, and I see that Kim wrote about working well with teams, and they worked well when they were in their chat area. And I would think about a conversation that Michaela brought up earlier. And so how important teams are now, and how important it is to express, if you can, that you may be working in a virtual team, and how that transfers, because, you know, as we know, life is different now, right? So can we go to the next slide, please? Okay. So here's another layer that we have when we think about applying for jobs, and that is an applicant tracking system. Oh, thank you, Megan. So what this is, it's sort of a crawl. I would think of it sort of as a web crawler. And so when you submit an application to for a job that does not go to an individual, it goes to an application tracking system. And what that does is it sort of scans your resume against the job description, and it looks for a correlation between your resume and the job description, which are transferable skills, keywords, etc.
Oh, sorry.
That's good. No, you're fine. So this is the one that we use at Granite State, and it gives you 2 scores. So you would put in your, oh, this also, oh, I didn't really, all right, sorry, just distracted myself. Don't you love it when you distract yourself? So what it does is it looks at your resume, you put in your resume and you put in a job description, and it gives you a target score. And the score is not only based on your resume against it, but your resume also gets its own score based on, is it too long? Is it too short? Are you using the same verb too many times? So you want to have a high score in both areas. And then you can also link your LinkedIn. Can you go to the next slide?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that this is a free site. So any of you can go and visit this site, and all of the resources on here are free. And it's a really great thing to come back to, even if you're not necessarily looking for a job now. Just save it in your back pocket for a rainy day.
And so Bridget just put that in the chat. So this is another one. I think this is a pay one. Is that right, Mercedes?
So you can do the first one for free. And I do find that JobScan is a little bit more thorough than Resume Worded is. But yeah, if you want to like have them really do an in-depth look at your resume, cover letter, and LinkedIn, you would want you have to pay for the service. But let's say, you know, you're looking for a job for a month or two, $30 to get yourself through the applicant tracking system may really be worth the money.
Yeah, it could be money well spent. So the other thing I wanted to say about LinkedIn and these 2 job scanners, and there could be others that I'm just not aware of, is that if you have a LinkedIn profile and you can put that you're open for jobs without the whole world knowing it, so without your current employer knowing it. And people who are job who are employers or headhunters can go and run an algorithm against the job that they have opening, and it will pick up people, say like you, and they'll contact you to see if you're interested in interviewing. So you may not be actively looking for a job, but it might be something like, I'm open to new possibilities. And to go through this exercise with your resume and your LinkedIn profile is good. The other thing I wanted to say about, I should have said a minute ago, and I'm sorry, I forgot, is every time, because of the way these crawlers work, every time you apply for a job, you may have to tweak your resume. And I know it takes time to do it, and I know it can feel a little painful, but it's, if you don't tweak your resume and you're not matching those keywords, you're never going to get noticed. And you know, your Aunt Jane might be the best proofreader in the world, and I'm sure she's a lovely lady, but you really do need to use these tools. They're available, they're free, and it really will give you a leg up.
Thanks. And another piece about applicant tracking that I think is like really crucial to mention is that, let's say that your resume says communications with an S on communication, and the job itself says communication specialist or something like that. If you do not have the word written, word for word, letter by letter, exactly how it is written in the job ad, it will cut you from the applicant tracking system. So these applicant tracking systems they're kind of brutal. And what ends up happening is a lot of jobs end up losing really good potential applicants who actually perfectly match the position, but they don't know how to tailor their resume specifically to the applicant tracking system. So this is a really unique skill set. And I recommend, if you have time, read up on what an applicant tracking system resume looks like and how that may differ from a resume that you would want a person to view if you were giving it directly to someone. They're two very different formats. So that's just something to kind of be aware of.
Okay.
So we wanted to kind of switch gears a little bit and talk about LinkedIn and the benefits of LinkedIn to you and your career and your brand. First of all, LinkedIn, as of April 4th, which I'm guarantee it's probably already up to like 800 million at this point. It's like you blink your eyes and they've got another 100 million users. It is huge. It is the largest professional network. It is the place to be able to have professional conversations in the virtual environment. It's all about, you know, who you are as an individual and how you have grown over time. That's the thing I love about it, is that really it's a place for you to establish your expertise, become an influencer, and share your knowledge, and also other people share their knowledge on their unique expertise. It's also a place to keep track of your accomplishments. You know, a resume may be limited to a maximum of 2 pages. Your LinkedIn profile is not limited by length. You really have a lot more flexibility as to what you can include in your LinkedIn profile. You can include samples of your work, pictures of you doing impressive things with different groups of people. It's so much more than a resume. I still encourage you to add your resume to your LinkedIn profile, but that's just one piece. Your LinkedIn profile says so much more. And really what that all comes down to is your brand. It's sharing your brand. And so when you think of LinkedIn and when you created a profile, I always say to people, you know, start out with 3 goals. And these 3 goals are really like the key, but they take a while to do. So they have to kind of be like long-term goals. So first of all, you have to complete your profile, and LinkedIn requires, so as you work on your profile, it'll give you a percentage of how finished your profile is. So your profile may be at 50% because you need to complete the section on certifications or something. So make sure that your profile is complete, because then the algorithms for LinkedIn is like an applicant tracking system, all based on algorithms. Everything is based on algorithms. So the more active you appear on LinkedIn, the more people will see what you have to say and will see your brand. So if you maintain a presence, if you complete your profile and you reach over 500 contacts, LinkedIn puts you in each one of these different categories in a different bucket to show that you are more active on LinkedIn, in which case then when you share things to your network, they're more likely to be seen by a larger audience. And if you don't do those things, then you're probably not going to be seen by many people. And whatever message you have to say that aligns with your brand is likely not going to be shared with as large of an audience. Kathy? Oh, you're on mute.
So the about section is really the most important place to start. And so the interesting thing that I often see people do is, and I'm trying to lean forward so I can see this slide because I have it kind of small, is, all right, thank you. I have to move stuff around for myself, is they might just put their title, but they're not very colorful about how they describe it. So your about section on this, it's just below where it says message, is where you can really talk about what your brand is. Because if you see this digital marketing, she can really go into what she's interested in, being, the SEO, search engine optimization, content marketing, etc. So you have a limited amount of space to do that, but I would suggest that you be really creative about it. And if you need some help, you can always reach out to Mercedes or I, or talk to a coworker or a friend, and then use the keywords or the transferable skills in that section. Because again, if somebody's doing a search, that's how you'll come up on the search. And I know sometimes I see people make sort of the mistake that I should only participate in LinkedIn when I'm looking for a job. And I think that really having a long-term presence over time, it gets you into people's sort of stream or news stream, and then it builds some sort of consistency. So people know that you're just not there for a job, but that you're actively participating in the conversation. And I think that's really important. And then don't forget to talk about your accomplishments and highlight your strongest skills. Did you have anything you want to add to that, Mercedes?
Yeah, so something to keep in mind regarding your about section is that really only the first one sentence will be seen on a cell phone. And a lot of people use LinkedIn on their phones. So really your first sentence is the most important, and you really want to encourage it to have a hook, something that's going to drive people to want to read the rest of it and actually click on the see more. And if they don't, then that's it. They're not going to see what you have to say. The other thing about the keywords is, in terms of the analytics and the way that LinkedIn works, is you need to pick 2 to 3 things that are your brand that you want to be known for. And then those same keywords, in the same way that they're written, need to be written throughout your profile. So written in the about section, written in your job experience, written maybe in your title, throughout your profile. And then the more times that those specific keywords, 2 to 3 keywords, are written throughout your profile, then the more that your profile will show up in search engines for those specific keywords. So if a person searches those keywords, you're more likely to come up.
So here are a few more tips. Use your most impressive title. And I think it's okay if it doesn't match exactly what your boss says your title is, but you really want to say something that will catch people's eye, right? It's nice to have logos from the organizations that you work at, volunteer, etc. And then, as Mercedes said earlier, include samples of your work. I had to go back just recently and remove some experience that was more than 10 years old, which was a little bit hard to do. I didn't really want to let it go. I did leave some that was a little more than 10 years because I wanted to show that I worked at university, community college, and in Granite State College. So I did leave one thing on that is older than 10 years, but you have this whole lifetime of experience and you want to share that. And sometimes it might not be people may not think it's relevant any longer. So that was a little bit hard for me. I'll just share that pain with you. Mercedes, do you have anything you want to add?
I mentioned before, you can, under each of the jobs that you have had previously, so there's a couple of different places where you can put pictures. Underneath your about section, there's another section that allows you to put things that you want to kind of be scrolling on your page. So that's one place to put pictures or samples of your work. The other place to put it is under each one of your jobs or volunteer experiences. You can attach, I think, up to 3 pictures or work samples. And that's such a great way to really showcase what you're able to do. So that's really important. The other thing is I wanted to differentiate here the difference between a keyword and a transferable skill. So a keyword is really about, a keyword may be a transferable skill, but maybe a transferable skill is maybe a little bit more focused on transferring to potentially a different market, a different industry, a different job, title, a different goal in mind. A keyword could be like communication. Well, lots of people could have communication, and it may be the thing that you want to be known for. So for instance, for me, I want to be known for innovative curriculum, and I want to be known for sustainability. And so those are keywords, but those keywords may not be my transferable skills. Sustainability isn't a transferable skill. It's knowledge based, right? So just something to think about in the difference between those two. So when it comes to your headshot, it's really important as a part of your brand to think about how you're portraying yourself. And your headshot actually means a lot. It really says a lot to people, and how you portray yourself in that headshot, it speaks volumes, really. What your background for your headshot says a lot, because if you're in nature, maybe that's what you value versus just having a white wall behind you. Ensuring that your picture is clear, that it's just your face, there's no one else in the picture with you. You're looking directly at the camera. You can be at a slight angle, but you're still looking directly at the camera and acknowledging the camera. It's not a selfie. There are no sunglasses. This is a really interesting piece, is that there has actually been research done that people who smile with teeth in pictures and headshots are seen to be more approachable. So as you're thinking about what your brand is and how you're trying to portray yourself, your headshot should align with whatever your brand standards should be, what you want it to be. Also, the clothing that you wear should be dressing for the job. So the direction that you want to move your career should be the type of clothing that you're wearing in your headshot. This photofeeler.com is a really, really great resource. It's a free website. You do have to create an account. And on this, you input various headshots that you have taken. And it can even be for dating profiles, by the way. So this is a multi-purpose website. And so you have to then review other people's headshots. And then consequently, you get your headshot reviewed for free. You can pay for the service, but I actually kind of enjoyed like reviewing 40 headshots to have my headshot reviewed. So this is kind of a fun thing to think about. Photofeeler.com. It's free. You create this thing, you input your headshot, and then people vote on how competent, likable, and influential you look for a professional headshot. They have different scoring for different types of headshots and different purposes. But I did really like this as kind of a gauge for, but if you have to choose between 2 headshots, which one people find to be most, like the better of the 2 pictures. And I really liked being able to do that comparative analysis, because that's the kind of dork I am.
So I found it really uncomfortable to do the photo feeler, because I felt like I was judging people, and I'm not comfortable with those feelings. So it's sort of funny the way you could tell I'm a red, right? After we went to our dots session yesterday, I didn't want to deal with the feelings of being uncomfortable. So search engine optimization, and I find it interesting that we've had no questions this whole time. So I find that interesting. So this is how you can use LinkedIn. This is how well, it's for this one's really about LinkedIn, how LinkedIn can help you to determine who's looking at your profile, what they're looking at, how they're responding to, and where sort of they come from, the people who are looking. So can you go to the next slide?
Yep.
Great, thank you. So again, we talked about this as far as your resume goes, when we use things like the job scan. Oh, okay, Tracy's waiting for the big question. Great, thanks, Tracy. And these are some ways you can find keywords. So we don't have to add this on a slide, but you don't want to go crazy. You don't want to use the same keyword too many times. You want to make your resume and your LinkedIn profile readable. Like, people know when you're faking it. And so as a college professor, sometimes people think they're faking it with us, and they write really long papers, but they don't get to the point. And we say, we're on to you. HR people are going to be on to you too if you try to dial it in. Do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah. So the main thing is like, don't just like write like, one sentence that is just like a list. I am a communicator, critical thinker, analytical, like, you want to make it actually like a sentence that is legible. And what's even better is if somebody can write you a recommendation and they mention these keywords, especially those softer skills that, are a little bit more difficult to describe in a resume. Like, you're a good team player, or you're a good listener.
So, let's go to the next slide. Sorry. So let's give you some examples on how this works.
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention with this slide, so LinkedIn provides you a variety of analytics, and analytics is essentially just data to be able to understand how to better engage people in a variety of ways. So that's what we're going to go on to next.
Okay. So when you look at your profile, you can see who has looked at your profile. So you can go to your profile and click on it. And let me just point this out. Where it says your dashboard on the left, there's a little thing that says all star. And so that shows that you've completed all sections of your profile. So once you get to that point, then you'll know that you're an all-star. I think I'm an all-star. I'm sure Mercedes is a super all-star. But you can see who's viewed your profile. And if you click over to where your pointer is right now, you can see where the people come from who have looked at your profile. Now, if you pay the extra, I think it's $10 a month, you can see everyone who has. This is sort of a teaser, but you get a good idea of who's looked at your profile.
30.
30?
Yeah.
It's $30 a month?
Yeah.
You also get
the premium.
Yeah.
It's expensive.
It is expensive.
But you can get this, at least where this arrow is, you can see like where people worked. So it is at least worthwhile. Like, once you click on the views of your profile and then you look at this little itty bitty arrow, you can't see all of the people, but you can see where people have worked. So that can be telling.
That can be very telling. Yeah, I had one just recently, and I couldn't imagine how they found me or why. Maybe it was through analytics they came across my profile. I had no idea. So then you can see where you come up on people's searches. So remember, I mentioned that someone may be searching for an employee. I do searches for employees once in a while. So if I'm looking for someone who is certain area or background, I can search on the background and find a potential professor. You may show up because you're in a meeting with somebody and they write your name down and they go and look at your profile after. I do that often if I'm in a meeting with new people that I don't know everyone. You may show up because of a post that you had, and we'll get to that in a second, but you can see who's looked at your profile based on what their job titles are too.
And you would find this in that same dashboard at the top of your profile where it says your dashboard. On the far right-hand side where it says search appearances, that's where you would click on that, and then it's going to show you where these people worked and what they did, yada, yada.
but basically you could just try to click on it, everything, and you might find something new, right?
Yeah.
And so when you post something in your feed, then you can see who has looked at you. So see where that arrow is pointing at 1,100 views. You can see where the people work, like what sector they work in or what area they work in by clicking on that little graph looking thingamajiggy. So that's also very helpful to see sort of where you're trending, I guess is probably the word, right? Where you're trending.
Mm-hmm. So some final thoughts regarding your LinkedIn profile. Just keep in mind that your LinkedIn profile is never finished. And it's actually very conscious to say that the more that you update your profile, the more that the analytics in LinkedIn show you as being active on LinkedIn. So you want to be constantly updating your profile. It really is never finished. And the other thing is just like with an organization, it really does take time to build your brand and also to develop your network. You can't just like wake up one day and say, I'm going to build a professional network. It takes years to develop a network, and it takes, cultivating time of writing people, engaging people, having really meaningful conversations. That's what I love about LinkedIn, is that you really don't just get to connect with people, but you can have very meaningful professional conversations in the way that you don't have the drama that you would have on LinkedIn or Instagram. It really is the great place to find out about trends and what's happening in the world around you. And I love all of those factors.
And you can also join professional networks or link with people who perhaps went to your same college that you went to, or have similar interests in a professional way, not like in a Facebook way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Were there any questions?
I think we do have a question. Maybe we should turn the slides off and just.
Sure.
Thanks, Mercedes. So I think, Tracy, do you still have your question?
Yeah, mine's kind of it might not be a big question, but it's a big problem.
Okay.
So if you went to my LinkedIn page, you would see that it's an all-star profile. It's a great profile. It encompasses a 27-year career that I no longer have. I don't want it anymore. And a lot of it is irrelevant because I don't do it anymore. So that's why I'm here in this class, because I need a huge rebranding. And it's a big challenge, because I'm noticing that when I go out on LinkedIn now and I'm changing my interests out there. So I'm looking at different stuff, and I'm liking different things, and I'm following different people now. So that sort of thing is changing, but the people I'm noticing who are still looking at me and looking at my profile are people who are from my old life.
Mm-hmm.
I think that this is a really common thing. So just know, like, first of all, like, you're not alone. And it just comes down to going through your profile with a different set of eyes. First of all, you probably want to weed out some of that information. So for instance, I've taught at 3 different universities. I merged all of that information, you'll see it on my profile, into literally one job. And it ends up kind of demeaning the work that I've done, because I've taught a lot of classes in a lot of different places, but I cut all that out. I just said I've worked for universities and taught classes. Bam.
And that's what I was thinking when you said that. And then when Kathy, when you said, I cut out all of this stuff, and it hurt your heart to cut it out because it was meaningful to you. There's so much stuff I can cut out, but it was all at the same company. And I mean, I had a bunch of different jobs, but it's going to make like this go to like this, and people,
but that's good.
I guess I just have to bite the bullet is what it comes down to.
You really want to target your message, right? And by having all that extraneous stuff that you no longer want to be part of, it's distracting.
It's killing me is what it is. It's really
Yeah.
killing my, okay. I guess I just needed some positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
It's really hard. It's really, really hard, but it's worthy. And just remember, like, our brands are ever changing. We as individuals are ever changing, and you're allowed to remove stuff. That doesn't mean that your past is gone. You know, my experience working the Emmys and the Oscars and the Grammys in my event planning days are not, they'll always be a part of me, but they're not on my LinkedIn profile. And that's okay. You know,
Weird
like,
how
not
much
everyone
I
has to
identify
see
with that.
everything. And
So,
that's
I think
okay.
the main thing is to think about where you want to go and how to leverage what you've done before to where you want to go. Right.
That's right.
And it's hard. I know it. I get it.
Thank you.
Laura asked, do we need to keep our resumes to a single printed page? And I would say, from my point of view, it depends.
Yeah.
I think most people say 2 pages. I work in higher ed, so mine is like, I don't know, Mercedes, mine's like 7 pages
But
long.
yours is a CV.
Mine's a CV that if I sent in a 2-page, people would not even look at it. So I think it depends on where you work, what your career field is. What else do you think?
I also think it really depends on the amount of experience you have. So like when I have taught undergrads at more of a traditional institution, and I've seen students who really, you know, volunteered for, you know, a couple of different places in high school and did this and that, and it's 2 pages, I'll many times say to them, you don't really need this to be 2 pages. And then I've seen other people who have so much experience, they can barely fit it into 2 pages. And so it really kind of depends on your experience and also the job and the norms for that particular position. So that's a piece of it too, is that, you know, my husband is an engineer, and in electrical engineering, their norms for their resumes are completely different than in the social science areas like mine or Kathy's. So being really aware of industry standards is a huge piece of that. But I think that generally the rule is that no more than 2 pages. That's really, like, people will not even look at the 3rd page, because it's kind of like the industry standard is 1 to 2 pages is what you want to strive for. 1 page, I think, if you are a person that has experience, can be limiting, because it will only really show the jobs, but you can't really put in the competencies and more importantly, when thinking about these analytics, the data and what you have been able to accomplish, because that's really what, when people see resumes, they want to see that, like, you increased sales by even 10%, 30%, or that you increased participation. You built a conference up from 200 to 500 people. You built up a social media profile from 100 people to 1,000 people. They want to see growth. And so it does kind of take some space to be able to show the growth that you've been able to accomplish. And that kind of does create a lot of creative thinking too, because you have to kind of keep those metrics in the back of your mind as you're working or volunteering.
So we have another question, which, so do we have a sense for how common it is for companies to use applicant tracking systems? And are there certain fields that tend to or don't? And I would say, more or less, if you're sending it to a website, just assume they're using a tracking system.
Yeah,
that's sort of what our
individual.
That's what our people in career services have told me. So I believe her, because she has all these certifications after her name. But if anyone wanted to talk to her, I think she's open to talking to people who are outside of Granite State College. So if you want her contact, I'm happy to share it with you. She's really good.
Yeah, unless you have an in and you know that an organization does not assume that they do. It's really more normal to have an applicant tracking system or not. So like in my case, I actually have 2 resumes. I have an applicant tracking system resume, and I have a regular resume that's a little more pleasing to the eye. My applicant tracking system resume it's not like a resume that's like, it doesn't have pretty fonts. It doesn't, the spacing is not as neat, and it's a very, very different format than a resume you would write, for somebody like the traditional ones that you would learn to do that have pretty fonts and have spacing and, like would have maybe more bullets. Applicant tracking systems are very funny in that there are certain characters or fonts that they won't even read. It'll just show up as being like scrambled. And so you have to really be aware of the changing trends and how these tracking systems will read your resume.
And at one point, I think before we had access to programs that would help you to determine if there was a track, they used to recommend that you'd use just a word cloud. So you could take the word cloud from the job and you could take the word cloud from your resume and compare. But you do have these tools. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done with using a word cloud and trying to figure it out. A lot of editing. Any lingering questions? You could just speak up. I think we're almost out of time.
I have a quick lingering question. I know I'm supposed to end us out, but based on what you said about your, applicant tracking system resume, Mercedes, doesn't the system then send that resume to a human who might be like, this is all over the place?
Well, so then that's the challenge, right? Is that your applicant tracking system resume has to meet two needs. It has to be able to get you through the applicant tracking system, and then a person who actually looks at it has to be able to still want to read it. So that's really the challenge of writing resumes now, which is something we didn't have even 10 years ago. Our jobscape has changed so much. But the good news is that the average person doesn't know this information. So it gives you a leg ahead if you know it and others don't.
She's always looking for the positive. She's great to work with. Yeah.